In September, there were blackberries, but by October, only thorns. I knew this because I'd arrived in this little town of Nelson in time to taste the blackberries. All the other teens with me on the overgrown forest path had lived in Nelson for most, if not all, of their lives. But I had only 1 month. That was the problem. 1 month made me a fun novelty in their lives, but not a necessity. I hadn't wanted to spend my Saturday evening fighting brambles in search of a witch, but I couldn't afford to say no to my new friends. Stevie and Blake had been best friends for 10 of their 15 years, and Carla and Sarah Beth were 2 of the prettiest girls in school. Plus, Carla had kissed my cheek. I had to say yes when they asked me, especially when Carla asked me. A bramble snagged my hoodie, and I paused to pull free. The sun and the moon fought for dominance in the sky, but the sun was quickly losing the battle, and the shadows between the trees were nearly impenetrable to my eyes. Blake had said he was bringing flashlights, but I hadn't seen any. I hoped they were in his backpack, because the idea of navigating by the wind in the branches and the croaking frogs was even less appealing than the rest of the trip. Sarah Beth breezed by me with a full-lipped smile.
It's not much further, Quint.
Come on, guys, you can't believe this story. Mud squished under my shoes. Ahead, something took flight and Carla gave a little squeal, followed by a nervous giggle.
Oh, the story's true. At least the part about the burning of old Carla as a witch.
Blake said, arm around Carla's shoulder to guide her. Carla winced. She must have gotten shit her whole life for sharing a name with the old witch. Maybe that's why she was so dead set on this venture. She couldn't escape the legend, so she was walking directly into it. I shot her a meaningful glance, or I hoped it was. So, why do we want to waste our night seeing where some poor old woman burned?
Old Carla wasn't some poor old lady. She was a murderer and a real witch. They say she ate her victim's eyes, like a vulture pecking at roadkill.
Stevie said from behind me. He clapped a hand on my shoulder and urged me forward.
Shut up. This way. And they always say that about women. History is cruel to strong women.
Carla snapped. Stevie lowered his voice to continue with the legend. Carla had already related it in school, but somehow it seemed creepier and more real out in the nighttime woods, where old Carla was said to have lived.
Old Carla was a real witch. Don't let anyone say otherwise. Town legend states that she didn't fully die when she was burned, because before the town came for her, she cut out her tongue in the middle of an incantation. She infused it with her true essence, and it grew vulture wings and flew away. They say she sees with it using the eyes of the dead, and any that interfere with her domain, she kills, slithering inside their mouths, trying to find a new home.
I rolled my eyes and hurried ahead of Stevie. The sun was barely a glimmer now, and the frog's song filled the air.
This is the area it happened. The cave she lived in has never been found. But
Sarah Beth stopped to fall back with Stevie.
So we're searching the woods for an evil witch. Blair Witch style.
Blake said. Hopefully with better results, I muttered, but kept walking. We were already 40 minutes into ruining my memories of summer blackberries. Carla gave a happy cry from up front.
It's still here. Come look, guys.
We all crowded up to look. All I saw was a pile of boulders leaning against a rock shelf.
A cave. I think this is the place. Look deeper. There's a real cave inside.
The frogs had gone silent. In fact, I couldn't hear anything around us anymore. The moon stared down, but all the usual forest noises had died off, and a rotten scent came from within Carla's cave.
This is where old Carla lived.
Carla said with perfect confidence. How would she even know? But her hair was black and shiny, and smelled like honeysuckle. I didn't question her.
We've looked all over the place. There's nothing here, just rocks.
Blake said, apparently immune to the devastating properties of Carla's hair.
Some rocks shifted in the windstorm last week. Step in. Look.
Carla said. Blake pulled out a flashlight from his pack and handed one to each of us, except Carla, who had brought a headlamp from home.
It's so quiet. Does it seem weird to anyone else?
Stevie commented, hugging his arms around himself.
Shut up, Stevie.
Sarah Beth said, officially closing the issue. Blake stepped through the gap in the boulders. Carla dared the rest of us with her eyes. Stevie and Sarah Beth went next, and I followed with Carla close behind me, her breath on my neck. It smelled bad. I wouldn't have pegged her for the bad breath type. The tunnel was tight, but as Carla predicted, it led into a cave in the rock shelf. Our flashlights zipped around the space. There was nothing inside to convince me anyone had ever lived there, or that anyone would want to.
Is there a bird nesting in here?
Stevie asked, bending and picking up a feather into his flashlight beam. Blake replied with a giant grin.
A vulture, maybe.
It sure stinks like rotten meat. Let's go.
Sarah Beth said. Before anyone could respond, she pushed past me, back through the divide in the rocks. Carla smirked, back to darkness fogged rock, arms folded under her chest. She seemed to dare me with her eyes not to leave the cave. But the smell really was unbearable. But for me, it was the silence that really did it. Even in a cave, there should have been some ambient sound. Rocks grinding underfoot, drips of water from the earlier rain. But there was nothing. Stevie was next to shove toward the exit of the cave. I followed. I could see Sarah Beth reach the gap in the rocks to step out under the sky. As she did, she winced and stumbled to the side, hand flying out in front of her. She shook her flashlight, and the beam bobbed up and down on a tree across the way.
Sarah Beth?
Stevie asked, reaching for her. He stepped out and froze. I stood there, crammed in between him and Blake, who had followed me.
What's going on?
Blake asked. Sarah Beth waved her flashlight more, and it jolted over the trees.
Flashlight went out.
Sarah Beth screamed. I pushed out past Stevie, who was still frozen in place, and reached toward Sarah Beth. But as soon as I stepped out of the cave, the world went black. My grip tightened around my own flashlight, but no light. But it wasn't just a flashlight. All light was gone. The moon, the stars. Everyone's flashlight had just plunged into darkness, all at once. My hand fell on Sarah Beth's arm. I'd meant to comfort her, but my own panic settled in. What? I started, then stopped, realizing that as I spoke, light had come back, but the view was strange. It took me only a moment to realize why. I was looking out past my tongue and out through my teeth, as if my eyes were in the back of my throat. Through this strange vantage, I witnessed Blake stumbling out into the night, one arm extended. I turned back to warn Carla, but she wasn't in the passage. I could only make out the shine of her eyes from within the darkness of the cave.
The witch! It's her curse!
Sarah Beth shrieked. What? I stammered. I didn't seem capable of saying anything else. I didn't like how my vision blackened and shuddered when I spoke.
We're seeing with the witch's eyes. She's coming for us.
Stevie said, voice low and soft, shaking.
We gotta get out of this place.
Blake said. I kept staring into the dark back at Carla. She'd kissed my cheek, and her hair smelled like honeysuckle. I didn't want to leave her behind, but I would. If this was a test of my bravery, I had failed it, not even for Carla. Inside the cave, Carla fell down. I didn't hear her body strike the ground, as if the air just swallowed all sound except our voices. Then, another sound. The whisper of feathers. A firm flap of wings followed by more. Something flew out of the dark towards us. Run! I yelled, but I didn't. I'd seen the wings, weathered and tattered, breathing down the cave entrance. What was the story? She killed people by taking their tongues. I clapped my hands over my mouth. Complete darkness fell again. Sarah Beth whimpered off to one side, and then a fall of footsteps. The sound quickly disappeared into the hungry night. I stood there, shivering, shaking with one hand clamped over my mouth and my lips pressed hard together. Something brushed my leg. Then, a lukewarm wetness brushed over my neck to my ear. A tongue.
Don't you want to kiss me now?
Whispered Carla's voice. But it wasn't the Carla I knew. And the stench of the tongue burned in the nostrils, like rotted meat and smoke twined together. The wet tongue licked up along my ear, drool dripping down onto my shoulder in regular drops. Slime coated the areas she touched. I swung my free hand at the thing but didn't connect. Sight isn't really a sense that I'd spent a lot of time appreciating. I did now. Unable to stand it anymore, I ran, off to my right. I briefly heard someone else's stumbling footsteps. They were going the wrong way. I didn't care. I headed toward where we had come, back toward the blackberries of the summer. I slammed into a tree, bashing my forehead and shoulder. A trickle of blood dripped from the head wound, dripping down into my eye. I blinked at the sensation, then forced my eyes closed. They couldn't see anything anyhow, but maybe that would feel less terrifying if my eyes were closed. My brain expected not to see when my eyes were closed. My fingernails pressed into my cheeks, moving as slowly as I could bear. I felt with my feet and hand in front of me. I could have lowered the hand from my mouth, but I didn't trust myself not to accidentally open it, gasped for air, or I tripped on a root. My elbow bashed into the ground and jammed against my jaw. Pain shot through me, but I kept my mouth shut. A scream echoed out. The air that had killed all sounds seemed to carry this one on purpose. Savoring it, I couldn't tell who had screamed. I shoved myself up to my feet and stumbled forward. Brambles caught on my arms and my jeans. One snagged in my hair. I kept moving. My foot plunged into a stream. Wrong direction. We hadn't passed a stream. Maybe if I had lived in Nelson my whole life, I'd known the geography better. Why hadn't I trusted one of the other kids? They knew the area. I turned around and started to blindly move in one direction. My jaw ached from jabbing it in the fall and from clenching it tight.
Over here!
Blake yelled. I turned, trying to locate his voice.
Over here! Over here!
He didn't sound far, and I stumbled ran as quickly as I could in his direction, almost falling into a bush and hip-checking a tree on the way. But his voice came closer as I moved.
Quint, man! Over here! Just follow my voice.
Was I dreaming it, or was the light seeming to move on my closed eyelids? Could it be a flashlight beam? I dropped mine back by the cave. But maybe Blake hadn't. If I could see again, then I must have some distance from that hellish place.
It's okay, man. We're safe here.
Blake said, panting. I could smell the witch on him. She'd probably licked him too. I dropped my hand from my jaw to reach out toward his voice. There was definitely light behind my eyelids, but I couldn't seem to open my eyes. Where are the others? I managed to get all the words out before my brain clicked. I was still seeing through my teeth. And almost worse, I was facing the cave. The only light in the clearing was several flashlights that had fallen to the ground. I did see Blake, but he certainly hadn't been talking to me. He lay sprawled on the muddy ground, mouth open and blood trickling out. Another form was crumpled at the edge of the woods. I couldn't see it well in the cursed light, but I thought it was Sarah Beth. She wasn't moving. All that running and I hadn't gotten anywhere. I screamed, unable to stop. Wings flapped close by, and attached to them a piece of flesh, pinkish grey and long. A tongue. It flew at me. Into me. A foul taste like rotting flesh and charcoal filled my mouth. My fingers clawed at my face, trying to latch on, but the tongue was slick, slimy. My scream turned into a gurgle. Everything went black as the tongue filled my mouth.